In this video, we're going to talk about symmetric field physics. This is a new idea which is delivered from different extraterrestrial civilizations. One of them is civilization of Essassani, and it's delivered from Bashar, which is channeled by Dario Anka. But there are also other extraterrestrial civilizations which kind of support, expand, and extend upon this idea. Symmetric field physics, it's about natural and cosmic forces, natural and cosmic laws. It's about understanding the subatomic or the substructure of the physical reality, or what we call consciousness. Because everything in our life is made out of consciousness, there is nothing else from which can be made out of. By understanding consciousness, we can understand everything. But the basic building blocks of consciousness is the idea of space and time. All dimensions, all densities, no matter how high or how low you go, they relate to the idea of space and time. And before 1905, we thought that the space and time are completely separate ideas. We thought about time like cycles, which we measure minutes, seconds, months, years, and so on. About space, that we can measure length, area, volume, and so on. And this is true, but this is a very limited perspective. In 1905, Einstein introduced special relativity. 10 years later, general relativity, which we can see here, different slides. But this changed our understanding about these two ideas. And now I would like to share with you different slides where we can explore them and going even deeper than that. Explore them and understand all the substances, all the forces, the fields, consciousness, who we are, not just to allow us to create a zero-point energy or clean energy prototypes or devices, but to feel empowerment also within ourselves, to feel more empowered, to feel more positive, more energized, and with more positive experiences, with more clean energy within ourselves. So the first slide I prepared today for you, it's about the idea of the future. So we have from the right side Bashar, which is an extraterrestrial, coming from the future timeline, maybe 10,000 years into the future. And he talked about this kind of graphics, this kind of diagram, sharing that the space and time are symmetric. The more you have from the space, which is this yellow sign, the more you expand the space, the more time shrinks down, So this is a symmetric diagram which is dealing with the symmetry between space and time. But from our past, our ancestors, this is Lao Tzu, they also understand, in the Taoism, they understood that life, it's trinity. It's made out of polarity, which is positive and negative, yin and yang, black and white if you wish, but also a fulcrum point when this polarity merge together and create a unity, a fulcrum point of balance, which is what they call Tao. Now, this idea of symmetric expression of existence, it's a very, very important for us to understand, because we can relate this again to all forces and to all energies and to the the laws of the universe and the natural laws. So our job here with you is to take this knowledge from our ancestors and from the future, from the ETs, and create, to use it, to utilize it, to create an experience, to create a reality that we prefer in the present moment. So we're going to deal with information from the past, information from the future, combine those and fuse them into our present moment to create empowerment, to create an experiences, empowerment from within, like a state of being, empowerment from without, like a zero-point energy devices. This is the main idea of this video and the videos that will follow after that. Okay, so there is a symmetry, there is this knowledge. It's not just from the future, because the knowledge, it's dealing with universal and natural laws which are infinite, which are constant. That's why we can find it in our past, and that's why we can find it in our future. It's everywhere, it's eternal, it's indestructible, it's golden, it's not tarnishing, this kind of information, this kind of knowledge. And right now we are in the pivot point where we can finally begin to remember this kind of knowledge, this kind of ideas. Okay, let's see what we have on the next slide. In the next slide we have one session that is called Bashar's Lab. This is an old session in which Bashar is talking about time dilation and how the idea of time dilations can relate to this kind of graph you can see here, and how you can use this diagram to create one of the first prototypes that can allow us to understand, to tap our fingers into a science he called etherics. It's not electronics, it's not electricity, it's an etherics. It's the ability to tap into higher octaves with higher frequency and higher speed, and to draw energy into our four-dimensional reality. 3 of space and 1 of time. So maybe some of you know this video before, maybe they watch it already, but I will play it anyway because there are certain ideas that they are not very obvious. I want to stop the video, talk about them, point them out, and then we begin to connect them and fuse them into a point that is going to make sense. Let's see what Bashar has to say about.
What do we have? Space-time. Would you also like to remove the 4A and B? What do we have there? A little space-time graph.
Now, I'd like to stop the video here and just to point out the difference between this graph, which you're going to see again in the same video, and this graph here. There is a difference, and this is this line in the middle. This line in the middle, it's one of the most important components in this graph. Okay, this line, Bashar in other sessions, such as crystals and electromagnetism, there is a such session where he talk about this kind of line or axis, he called it the time axis, have positive and negative time, and have time and anti-time. This time axis is the fulcrum point, which all the realities, all dimensions are kind of experience it in this line. And this fulcrum point, this axis, it's connecting the smallest idea of space, which is the dimensionless point, which is here. Okay, it's from the left side, and on the right it's the smallest idea of time, which is the present moment. It's single point of singularity, which is also infinite, but all the future and all the past compressed into this point of singularity we call the present moment. So the connection between here and now, this central axis also from other extraterrestrial civilizations, it's called also x-axis or the primary axis, and this axis always happen when we have a kind of consciousness, no matter how big, how small, an octave of energy. When we have an octave of energy, this central axis, it happens in the middle, and is where current prefer to flow. It's the balancing point between space and time. Now let's see, this is very important, and this is an axis or fulcrum point that we're going to remember how to access and get empowered.
All right. Now, let us explain. We have talked about this briefly before. You may sit, thank you very much. The idea is, you already know from what you call your science of relativity, or some of you may not know this, that there is an effect in your reality called time dilation. That when you move, let's say in a spaceship, faster and faster and faster and faster, and approach what you call the speed of light, which is simply, in a sense, the border of your particular reality. Doesn't mean you can't actually travel faster, it's just the border of your particular reality, just the threshold. But in your physical reality, while you travel in your physical reality up to the speed of light, the phenomenon called time dilation is noticed to occur. What this simply means is, the faster you move in space, the slower you move in time. Time slows down. This is what creates the twin paradox as many of your scientists have expressed it, so that if you imagine there are two twins that are the same age, and one steps into a spacecraft and goes out into the stars and travels very close to the speed of light, time for them on the ship will slow down to the point that when they come back, they may actually be many, many, many years younger than the twin who stayed on Earth, who will have aged in the meantime. The idea to understanding this is to understanding space-time as a 100% idea. There can only be 100% space-time. So, if you are traveling at 50% of the speed of light, then the idea is that you are using up that much space. There's only 50% of time left. So you can only experience half the time. The closer you travel to the speed of light, you're using up more and more of the space of space-time, and there is less and less of the time left. So you only experience a little bit of it. So if you're traveling at 99%, you're only experiencing 1% of time and 99% of space. Conversely, when you're standing perfectly still, as most of you are right now, you're experiencing almost all of time and very little of space at all. You're not moving around. So it's always a shared idea. Whatever you use of time, you can only have that much space left. Whatever you use of space, you only have that much time to use. The graph shows you this in this way. The line is all of time at one end, all of space at the other end. And when you start moving and expanding your use of space from zero into a cone that widens, then you have very little time left. But when you go the other way and use all of the idea the other way, then the cone moves in the other direction. It's just an expansion cone. I'm using very little here, I'm using a lot here. Using very little of this when I'm using a lot of this, but when I'm using a little of this, I'm using a lot of that. So it's just a double cone going in this way to show you when you are using a little bit of this or a lot of that. You follow me so far? All right. Now, this is also the key to building a space-time antenna. A device that actually uses space-time energy that you can then learn to translate into different forms of energy if you wish, such as electricity or light or heat or whatever you wish to do with it. The space-time antenna actually takes the form of this graph of the two intersecting cones. So if you imagine in your mind right now, let's say made out of a spiral copper wire or a spiral tube. Imagine starting on the ground and imagine bringing the tube around in a circle and then spiraling it upward, getting smaller and smaller in circumference. You're describing a cone. You're spiraling up to the tip of the cone. However high you want the cone to be, doesn't matter. However wide you want to start, doesn't matter right now for the purpose of this illustration. It will matter later in terms of fine-tuning the geometry to get the right effect. But right now, just for the purpose of this illustration, just imagine starting on the ground, start spiraling your tube around and around and around, smaller, smaller, till you have a cone made up out of a spiraled tube. At the top, at the very tip of the cone, then take that tube and move it out to the same diameter as the base of the cone and start spiraling your way down through the other cone. So when you spiral it up, leave some gaps in between the tube so that when you spiral down, you can go through those gaps and actually have the two cones interpenetrating. Until you get all the way down, now you're inside the base of the first cone, creating a downward facing cone, and you get down to the tip at the bottom and then bring that out and connect it to the base of the other cone. Now you have two interpenetrating cones, one facing up, one pointing down. In a sense, it's almost like the idea of the Solomon seal, or what you now call the Jewish star, the six-pointed star. If you look at it simply flat on, it will sort of appear a little bit like this idea, although not quite exactly.
Now, I'd like to stop here again the video and share a little bit more about the Jewish star, or the six-pointed star. So the Merkaba, which is actually the advanced space-time antenna, which is the Merkaba or the stella octangula as we call it, if you see it in the flat plane, in the two-dimensional plane, it will appear like the Jewish star. You will see on top and the bottom, and then you will see this, so you will see like a Jewish star. But the idea in the 3 dimensions is that we have 2 tetrahedrons interpenetrating, and the one that is pointing up have a lot of space here underneath. So we have 3 aspects of space. We have length, we have the depth, and we have the height. So this is the 3 dimensions of space, and they are connected with 1 dimension of time, the smallest dimension of time, which is the present moment. Okay, this is the physical mind, which is our physical mind. Now, we can move in our physical reality whatever we want in this space, but we can only experience this present moment, 1 instant of time. The other tetrahedron, it's opposite. We have 3 aspects of time, past, present, and future, and only 1 aspect, the smallest one, of space, a dimensionless point here. Okay, on the bottom we have a here, and we have past, present, and future. This is the higher mind. This is the spiritual world. The higher mind can see all the timelines in past, present, and future, and that's why it can guide us through intuition, through impulses, excitement, and different kind of impulses, to embed this kind of knowledge and send it through an impulse. Okay, so the more here we have, the more time you have, less space, and the opposite, the more space we have here, less time. So the Merkaba, it's kind of 3-dimensional representation of the Jewish star, and it's also related to the same diagram that Bashar is talking about, but he's going to share this conical structure. Is the most primitive version, which is allow only to tap our foot into the water to understand this concept in a nutshell. While the Merkaba with the Sierpinski gasket, it's really designed, it can help us to build an actual prototype that works.
But it's the idea of 2 interpenetrating triangles. When you create this kind of a resonant device, and you do it where the cones are actually angled at their apices at 33 degrees, you will be able to actually have a space-time antenna. Depending upon the quality of your material, the number of windings, the size of the cone, and what have you, and other conditions, you can actually cause this cone with a little bit of an electrical charge to start resonating at a certain frequency that will amplify that energy by drawing down from space-time energy, and thus then giving out more energy than you're putting in. So this diagram, this space-time diagram, shows you literally graphically how to create a space-time antenna for those of you who might be interested in playing with this idea as a fun home experiment.
Okay, so 5-6 years ago I began to play with this idea and make an extensive research, and in these videos I'd like to share what I have discovered actually. Before we continue in this slide, I prefer a little bit history, because what Bashar says is not just a theory, it's a fact. It's discovered from our conventional science. So in 1905, Albert Einstein, for the first time expressed the special relativity. What does this mean, special relativity? Why it's special? It is special because it's dealing only with the constant speeds and with inertial frames. Or in other words, this theory of relativity, it's about the relationship between space and time, as Bashar explained. The faster you move, more space you experience, less time. So there is a relationship, there is a ratio, always shared idea. So they are relative. You can have more of one and less from the other. So there is a relationship. That's why it's relativity. And why it's special is because it's valid only when we have a constant speed, like the speed of light, like the satellites, like the speed of our planet, and other speeds or inertial frames that have constant speeds. Okay, but later on, 10 years later, Einstein also adds general relativity, and general relativity is dealing with acceleration, with deceleration, with speed that is changing. It's constantly changing. Now, this is about the gravitational field. You know very well, most probably, that if you drop an object in the gravitational field of our planet, it will accelerate with almost 10 meters per second squared. Constantly will accelerate, it will build up velocity. Okay, so the special relativity could not apply here. And Einstein, 10 years later, introduced the general relativity, and he said that the space-time fabric is curved, it can be bent when you have a higher mass, and this causes the space-time fabric to bend, but no one could prove that. No one can agree or disagree because no one can prove that. And 4 years later on, in South Africa, it was a solar eclipse that it took place, and Arthur Eddington, it's a British astronomer who actually used this solar eclipse because the sun was blocked and was not shiny, and he could see the light from the stars behind, if the light is bending, if it's curved. And they proved that, they calculated, and it was exact calculation that Einstein was right. So 4 years later on, Arthur Eddington, the English astronomer, proved the theory of general relativity. Okay, but what is here, what I want you to pay attention here is that the special relativity, it's dealing with speed, okay, with constant speed, and the space is extended, if you wish, or expanded, experience a lot of space, but it's kind of a linear space from point A to point B. It's one-dimensional, like a vector line, or two-dimensional. But in the general relativity, again, you experience a lot of space, but now the space, it's like a volume, it's like a density, like a mass, which is with different density. The higher the density, the more space, the more the space is concentrated. And also this kind of phenomenon called time dilation occur when we have strong, massive, dense celestial bodies. They have stronger gravitational field, and time slows down. So the time slows down not only when the speed or the velocity increase, but also within the gravitational field. The stronger the field, more time is slowing down. Okay? And 50 years later on, we begin to create applications to apply these kind of concepts in our tangible reality. We create the first GPS, 1973. Okay, so the GPS, the satellites, you need at least 4 satellites to create kind of triangulation, the coordinates, and those satellites are moving in the orbits with 14,000 kilometers. It's much less than the speed of light, but still it's very high velocity. And the time dilation is noticed to occur also there, but in a very small fractions. Just the time slows down 7 microseconds, okay, because of the velocity of the satellites. But also our clocks here, our watches on the Earth, which we are closer to the Earth core, to the Earth itself. So the gravitational field is stronger here on Earth, and we experience also time dilation, which is much stronger. Our clocks on Earth are slowing down with 45 microseconds. Or in other words, because the satellites are further away from that gravitational fields, this speed ups the clocks of the satellites with 45 microseconds. You can put it that way, it depends from which point you can see it. So the velocity of the satellite shrink the time 7 milliseconds, and because they're further away from the gravitational field, we have time quicker, 45 microseconds. Together, when you take one from the other, we end up with 38 microseconds faster time passing on the satellites. So we need atomic clocks to have there to sync the time there and the time on Earth, because for 38 microseconds, the speed of light, which is 300,000 kilometers per second, it will pass about 11.4 kilometers. This means that if just on one of these 4 satellites the clocks are not precise, we're going to have a huge displacement of this triangulation between these 4 satellites with 11 kilometers, and this will add up every single day. So we cannot arrive in the location that we want because we're going to have a huge difference. So this theory of general relativity, special relativity, we apply it. It's tangible. It's not just a theory. We use it in our daily life. If it's not this, we're not going to have GPS. It's impossible to have the GPS without this. Now, also the famous formula of Einstein, E equal mc squared, it means that the energy is equal to the mass multiplied the speed of light squared. In other words, if you have a very small amount of mass, you can have inside a huge amount of energy if you multiply it by the speed of light squared. And also the mass and the energy, they are kind of one and the same entity, like space and time. It's just to have energy, you need a lot of speed to add to the mass, and you have the energy. Or when you remove the speed from the energy, this energy is getting denser and denser. So think about that space and time are not just interconnected like one whole idea, but they're like substances. You say, I want to spend more time with my kids, like a currency. You're spending time like a currency. So when the time compressed, when you have time dilation, time compressed, this compression the time looks like a substance that is actually compressing. It's getting smaller or it's getting bigger. Okay, so it's not only symmetric, but also they are like a substance in a sense. We're going to go deeper and see how the substances relate to this. So here is again the same graph. We plot this central axis here, and this is the speed. The speed, it's like the fulcrum point, it's like the dial which set up the predominance more towards the space or more towards the time. Increasing speed, more space, less time. Decreasing speed, deceleration, you have more time, less space. Okay, so the speed, it's what triggers the predominances, And this, to understand this, we can use the water like an example. Now, when water is in a liquid form, if we heat it up, we add heat, then the water, the molecules will vibrate faster and faster and faster with higher velocity, higher frequency, and it will create friction. The water will become steam. As a steam, it will occupy a greater volume in space. Also, it will have a lower density, faster frequency, and higher speed. Okay, it makes sense because when you have a lower density, less things can create resistance. You have lower impedance. When you have lower impedance, you can allow yourself to move faster. And when you move faster, always around the motion, the vector of velocity, we will see later on other videos, you will have a torsion fields. They are like a spiraling fields around the vector of travel, and those three-dimensional spirals, or they are like a space story toroidal fields, when you plot them in the two-dimensional plane, they look like a sine wave. On the oscilloscope, when you plot them, they look like a sine wave. So this is, for example, here you can see the space it's increasing, it's widened, and the time it's decreasing. So when you increase the speed, you increase the space traveled, and the timing or the frequency is decreasing, which means that you will have 1 second, 1 hertz, and then half second, and then you go millisecond, microseconds. The higher the frequency, the timing, it will shrink, because the speed, it will increase. So the water as a steam have higher speed, higher frequency, lower density, but if you cool it down, you will condense it. This means that the speed will slow down and the frequency will go down, the density will increase. It will become liquid, like a drops. And then if you continue to cool it down, it will slower more and more and more and more. Lower frequency, higher density, and it will crystallize into ice. It will be tangible, it will be solid, not moving, not, it's not going to be liquid to move from here to there. It's going to be solid, stay in one place. So lower frequency, higher density, and lower speed. But it's the same water. The same thing is with the consciousness. In the spiritual domain, it's like a steam. In the physical domain, it's like an ice. This is very, very important. When you touch the ice actually store the heat from your body, and you experience this like a cooling effect. It's taking out the heat. It's storing it like a potential energy. It's like a storage. Okay, and this also in the ancient Chinese, the yin, the female energy, the invisible, the spiritual, the mysterious, the consciousness, the awareness, it's like a black because it's like an invisible, and it's like the space between the sound, the space, the negative space, and the matter or the form or the mass or the time, it's the male aspect, it's the visible. So you can see that in the space there is never completely empty space, always have a little bit of kind of something inside. There is no such thing like complete emptiness or non-existence. It will always have some kind of matter inside, and there is not completely solid substance. It will always have some kind of space within itself, no matter how dense it is. So in the next video here, next slide, we can see the space-time antenna, the conical conductor that Bashar was talking about previously. And these conductors, they are made with a golden proportion. You have here, imagine that you have imaginary squares, 13 units, then 8 units, then 5 units, then 3 units, 2 units. They follow the Fibonacci sequence, the Fibonacci ratio, and this creates a gradient of expansion which is relative to phi or to golden proportions. Okay, and this it's a very important because it will set up an apex angle between 33 and 34 degree, about 33.9 degree. It will be the apex angle. So this, how we can use that. So you see, if we make the cones in this shape with sharper apex angle, then the acceleration, it will be slower, because the expansion, it will take more time for the expansion to happen. In each instance you will have less expansion. If you increase the apex, then the expansion is faster, because each consecutive loop, it will be much bigger than the previous, much more bigger, like a ratio, and this will create faster expansion. So this, it will set up different speed. You can control the speed of expansion or the gradient of expansion or the gradient of speed by changing the apex angle. And the Fibonacci proportions or the golden ratio allow this expansion gradient or speed gradient to be aligned with the natural laws, because the nature prefer to expand and to grow in the golden proportions. We can see this everywhere in nature. It's sustainability, it's efficiency to grow with this kind of pattern. Okay, and the other thing is that this kind of conical conductor, it's a fractal. Fractal means that the same geometrical structure repeats itself, but increasing or decreasing in size, but keeping the same relationship. The fractal here is the idea of a spiral or the idea of the loop, and it repeats itself, the loop or the spiral, over and over again, but it's either expanding or it's either contracting. It's changing the size, but the relationship with the golden proportions stay the same. This, it's very important. And the other thing is that you will, if you join the Allistar-Center community, you will see that this central axis, Bashar, it's talking about spikes that we need to add inside the space-time antenna from the center almost to the apex, which will serve like antennas to direct the etheric energy, and it will enhance this kind of prototype. So even the fulcrum point or the central axis, it's built up inside that device. for those of you who joined the Allistar-Center community. Now, in this slide, we can see the space and time expressed now in a very different way, not just symmetric, but time, it's like potential energy. What this mean? In our chemical manual, which is a manual channel from other extraterrestrial civilization, they're talking about the time is subject to closure. It prefers to decelerate towards a point or others in space and spend time in duration there, not to move. This deceleration, this lower frequency and higher density create accretion, create a force which we call a strong nuclear force. This is one of the four main forces in our conventional science. We have strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, electromagnetic force, and then general relativity gravitational force. So accretion relate to strong nuclear force. This is the bonding force. The time they express like it's what is the bonding force that creates substances, materializing things, matter, form, substance, mass. You know, when you have mass and you put it inside a gravitational field, you can have weight. So it's something that is tangible, it's something solid, it's something visible, it's accretion, it's subject to closure, contract on itself. This is why in our Milky Way, Sagittarius A, the black hole, it's a very high density at the center. Energy contracts there, potential is huge over there. It's about the mind, and it's also about the male archetype of the male polarity. Okay, darkness again, a black hole. Why it's relate here to darkness? Because it's subject to closure, and as such, it does not reflect light. It's taking it in. It does not reflecting it. It's absorbing the light and does not reflecting it like the black color. Okay, that's why the black holes are kind of, completely black. The light cannot move from there. Why? Because space and time, they are expressed like energies that are different in predominance. They cannot annihilate or destroy each other, but they can divert each other. They can push each other because they cannot really mix, like they are like oil and water. And the black hole is such a dense, such a high potential, such a time field predominant energy that the space field or the photons, which have no mass, they are massless, they cannot go there. They just have to go around this kind of concentration of potential energy or the time field. So the space is kinetic, it's expansion as the steam, it's acceleration like the steam. The molecule moves faster and faster. It's reduction. It's the weak nuclear force. What we call in the nuclear physics half-life, when the mass of the nucleus it's begin to go. It's a half-life. It begin to dissolve with very precise timing. It's a spirit. It's awareness. It's beyond form. It's an energy. It is invisible. It's in the spectrum of light which we cannot perceive. It's a mystery. That's why it's mystery, because it's invisible. It's intuition. Intuition is beyond knowledge. It has a spatial property. It can hit you from, you don't know from where it's coming, but when you have the intuition, there is no logic. You don't know why you have it, but the answer can come instantaneously, and the intuition is beyond logic. Logic is subject to time. Logic is based on what you know in your past, what you acquire in your experience in your past, to make sense and to take decision based on that past. Intuition is beyond time. It cannot be explained with a rational mind. It's about heart, it's about female, it's about light. Again, the photons have no mass. This is what allows them to travel with the speed of light to experience huge space and less time. Now, these two ideas about potential and kinetic energy relate also to sacred geometry. This is the Metatron's cube. So the straight lines and the angles representing the male or the time field or the potential energy and the spheres or the circles around the intersections are representing the space. Okay, so the main idea in the sacred geometry, or the female aspect, so if we have more and more lines intersecting, we're going to have a huge higher potential point. The crossroad will be busier, more potential, more time, it will be concentrated there, but equal and opposite to that, a spatial sphere will appear. You know, the size of this spatial sphere, the diameter, it will be directly responsible to the magnitude of the potential energy that is concentrated at that focal point. The higher the potential, the bigger the sphere. And yeah, this is the male and the female aspect. So we can use the sacred geometry to create different matrices and build up potential differences in the circuits. We can create so-called flash matrix circuits. So this interplay between space and time, between kinetic and potential energy, can create all sorts of expressions. When they have internal and external pressure, they can take cubic structure, tetrahedral structure, all sorts of geometric patterns, you know. So how this relate to Bashar? Who is actually Bashar? We have the Vesica Piscis. The idea of the Vesica Piscis, it's the bonding between time field predominant energy and space field predominant energy. Two octaves with different speeds, with different frequency, begin to merge together. Okay, and we, in that common plane, which you can see here in this common plane, it's called the Vesica Piscis. All right, so Bashar is a result, is the third identity that happens between a Sassani being that we do not know his name, which is high frequency, lower density, spirit, quasi-physical, higher speed, and Dario Anka, human, lower frequency, higher density. And when they merge together, they create a Vesica Piscis symbol, or the sacred union, or the sacred marriage. And in between them, the third identity called Bashar appear like manifestation or materialization between spirit and matter. So when spirit and matter are bonding, we have manifestation and materialization. This materialization, it's energy that begins to condense, that begin to compress and to create accretion. It's energy in formation. This is exactly the most proper word, in formation. So this energy, what mean in formation? This means that the energy that happens in this common plane, it can be modulated in a different ways. For example, what it means to be modulated? We can modulate an energy field by changing the frequency of that energy field, and we call that frequency modulation, or FM. This is the modulation of our radios. We can modulate the amplitude also, changing the amplitude. It's amplitude modulation. We have AM radios too. Now we can change the phase of the frequency, and we can create phase modulation, and there are all sorts of modulation. But when we modulate the energy field, then each modulation represents some kind of symbol, and symbol can be infused with meaning, and this means that we can create, chain of symbols or information. So this manifestation, this materialization, this information, it's energy that is modulated. So Bashar, it's a third identity which is expressing a specific energy and specific information that comes from a higher plane, and can this information, the purpose of this information that Bashar delivered, that's why he's Bashar, the messenger who brings the good news. It's the good news because they come from spirit. So these higher perspectives, this idea of higher perspectives, that points of view he shared with us, is to strengthen the communication with our higher self. He is a permission slip that helps us to strengthen the communication with our higher self and increase this connection with our higher self, so each and every one of us can create the Vesica Piscis, the link between physical mind and higher mind, and feel empowered and gain access to all the informations that is relevant for that human being. So Bashar, it's like the third identity, you know. Now, the other idea here is that the birthday of Bashar is on 11 of November. And 11 is a symbol that represents the Vesica Pisces. You know, this is spirit and matter together again. You can see this, we can draw here this kind of triangle when we connect the centers of the two octaves. And if we plot the symbol of the first contact specialist of Bashar, the spiral will start somewhere in the middle, and it will expand counterclockwise, will end up here in the middle on the bottom of the triangle. This also means that if you take your hand, the right hand, and you follow the spiral, the vortex, with your fingers, then your thumb, it will show you the direction of the current or the flow of that energy and that information. It will be towards you. If you hold the contact crystal like that, the vortex is moving counterclockwise. Place your fingers and the thumb, it will show you the direction of information flow. It will be towards you. This is something that maybe people don't know. Now, the other idea here is that in 2016, I explored the teachings of Bashar regarding the higher mind, brain, and physical mind. Bashar explained very well that the idea of the higher mind, it's something that can conceive. The brain, it's receiving. It's like an antenna, like hardware that receive. And the physical mind is just to perceive. And this is very important. So in 2016, I was thinking about this idea. Hey, if my physical mind cannot conceive, but only my higher mind can conceive, what could be the name of this higher mind so I can talk with him and address him by his name, you know? And I was wondering about that. And when I begin to wonder, I say, hey, what could be your name? And in that instant, I received that name Allistar with double L. I didn't know what that meant. And when I opened my telephone to search in Google, I saw that it's 11 o'clock and 11 minutes, but also the day, the exact day I remember very clear. It was 11 of November. So 11 of 11 at 11 o'clock, 11 minutes. I opened the phone and I began to search what Allistar could mean. A few months after, I decided to create a website called Allistar-Center, a different platform. And I didn't know what that means. Center, I thought in my mind, it's like something that put together the knowledge that I want to express. But even a few months after that, when I began to explore numerology, I decided to swap each letter of the name Allistar and Center and see what's going to happen. And maybe 1 year later on, when I replace the letters with numbers, I get again 11, 11. A few years later on, when I begin to make this kind of space-time antennas and stuff, all of them they made out of copper conductive material, I understood that the copper itself, the atom, have also 29 electrons and 29 positrons. So it could be, I could say a lot more synchronicities than that, but this 1111, it's all about the connection. It's all about communication. It's information and energy between spirit and matter, bonding, a harmony, balance between those two, in first look contradictive and opposite ideas, but they are one and the same. Okay, so these three triangles, they also came, and it's a lot of meaning. I don't want to go deeper into them, but one of them is that it's the mind, the brain, and the higher mind. And the other is that those three triangles, you can see them from perspective where they can expand, but if you shift the perspective, you can see that the triangles contract, which it's a reminder for myself, from the higher self to the physical mind, that everything in life is just shifting the perspective. By shifting the perspective, you can expand or contract. You can change your experience and you can change your reality. So as above, so below. Now, in the next slide, I would like to go a little bit deeper and share what is the sacred union or the sacred marriage. This is the energy octaves, time field predominant, space field predominant. When they begin to merge, to recognize themselves, they need some time. When they begin to merge in the common plane, different kind of patterns begin to appear. You can see here the patterns changed. You can see here the pentagon and here. But when the distance between their center is equal to the radius of each octave, this is the Vesica Piscis Simvu, and inside it's this kind of Jewish star, as Bashar explained, or the Merkaba. So this is the materialization, this is the modulation that actually happened between the Vesica Piscis. This space-time antenna is the same like the idea of Bashar, because it happened in this common plane, And the other thing that some of the fans of Bashar may be curious to know is that if you swap each letter of the name Bashar from this table here, you will end up with the number 13. 13, you know that it means transformation, spiral, vortex, saibo in their ancient language. So Bashar, if you swap it, you will have 13. And it's very interesting. So he is the permission slip for transformation, for synchronicity, for creativity also, So in this diagram, we can see that when we have the Vesica Piscis, the Merkaba is happening inside, and this Merkaba is the materialization. So in other words, we can materialize subatomic particles, which we call electrons, and therefore create a higher amount of current and increase the output power. If everything is built precisely, correctly, then the fluctuation between positive and negative, between matter and spirit, it will create kind of oscillation or difference in potential, and then we can create an electrical current because of that. Even today, we generate the electrical current by shifting potentials, but we're using magnets, Now, in this diagram, you can see also that time field predominant octave here, or energy field, it's merging with a space field predominant energy field. And in this common plane also a vortex or spiral, saibo, it's happening. Number 13, it's happening. It begin to form. This is a creation plane. And this is another one prototype from Bashar, which there is a capacitor hemispherical plate on top and on the bottom. They have bottom. They are conductive, made out of copper, and inside, in the dielectric material, it's embedded this double vortex, double Fibonacci counter-rotating vortex. Okay, and now in this vortex, we said earlier that each time the time field cross its building point of potential, but you can see in this crystal clear image that these cross sections are increasing towards the center. Therefore, more and more density of them, of these cross sections, happens towards the center. So the potential, it's building, and when you have a higher potential at the center and lower potential on the periphery, the current prefer to flow naturally from higher to lower point of potential, because life is seeking balance all the time. It seeks balance. And imagine that right now you can see these spirals are moving clockwise. They move clockwise, they expand and extend. This is gaining inertia and momentum. The speed is accelerating, and when they reach the outer rim, they continue to move clockwise, but now they can enter from the other side of a spiral, and then they can converge, they can compress towards the center, continuing in the inner rim to move clockwise in the same direction, but then expand from the other spirals. So they have compatible spin because they follow the same rotation direction. The direction of rotation is the same, but because one of them is from outside towards the center and the other one is from the center towards the edge, that's why they look like counter-rotating, but they are not. They are rotating in the same direction. Okay. So they have compatible flow, they complement each other. The momentum and inertia that one of them is building by expanding, like the cyclotrons in our reality. We have particle accelerators called cyclotrons. When the particles create spiral bigger and bigger and accelerate the speed, velocity, but then it's shooting out. But in this case, it's going in the outer rim and then it's going in. And this is allowing the shifting between high energy state and low energy state. Again, shifting potentials. We create our lasers in a similar way by exciting the electrons from one energy shell, from one orbit, let's say, from one shell, electronic shell, to a higher, and then back and forth. And this constant shift from higher to low energy state give photons with the same frequency, which is very important to create the lasers. But okay, this in the book of a chemical manual also it's explained that when a capacitor, this is a simple capacitor, positive and negative, when this happens, each of the plates, positive and negative, have its own sphere, and there is a common plane in between where the spiraling energy spiral in and out. We can use this idea with our hand, creating like capacitor plates. The energy is building up, and our state of being, it's modulating that energy to create information, and we can send signal, thought, we can communicate telepathically by increasing the energy and modulate it in that way. Because when you have capacitor, this is a dipole, and when you pulse the dipole with AC, you create antenna. You can transmit electromagnetic frequencies. Okay, so the other idea here is the Sierpinski gasket. There are three golden ratios, golden proportions built into the space-time antenna here. This is the Sierpinski gasket, equilateral triangle with different iterations, and also this relates to the Pascal triangle. You can see the black are the numbers which you can divide by 2, and the white are the odd numbers that cannot be divided by 2. And if you take a line like this diagonally, you can see the Fibonacci numbers begin to appear in this kind of Pascal triangle, which relate to the Sierpinski gasket. So the golden proportion is built within the fractals of the Sierpinski gasket. This is the first golden proportion. The second one is between the shells of the space-time antenna. The first one, in our case, the bigger one, is 1.3 meters. The medium one is 80 centimeters, and the smaller one is 50 centimeters. So they diminish with the golden proportion. Okay, and the third embedded golden ratio, it's this distance of the Merkaba here on the triangles or the tetrahedrons, the sides. This distance is 1.618 times bigger from the point here of the Merkaba to the sphere. The negative space, if it's 1, then the size of the triangles will be 1.618 times bigger. And this is very important. This is 3 different golden proportions embedded in this antenna. The other thing that is interesting about the Sierpinski gasket, it's, let's say, in our case, the side of the triangles are 20 centimeters, so the total periphery is 60 centimeters. If you add one iteration only, you increase that total periphery by 1.5, magnitude of 1.5. Okay, the second iterations, you increase it again, multiply by 1.5, and then again and again and again, and this create compounding. When the more and more space you add, the more holes you drill, the bigger the total distance of the periphery grows. And what we say, when you increase the distance, you experience more space, the time shrinks down and collapse and have time dilation. Okay, this is how the Sierpinski gasket can create, in a sense, time dilation. But this is in the 2-dimensional. In a 3-dimensional, you can see inside the community how this is actually happen. So more space is equal less time. Why? Because the more holes, iterations we drill, the smaller and smaller and smaller the triangles become inside. Smaller triangle, smaller length is equal to the higher frequency. Smaller wavelength is equal higher frequency. So frequency is going higher, which means that the timing between the different cycles is shrinking, have time dilation. This is what it means. Now, what is our personal aim here with you, me and you, and our collective as a human beings? We already know very well the time field or the form and the time aspect. We are master of the limitations. We create limitations, we create restrictions, compression, depression, all of this we are familiar. We know our human nature. We have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of intellect, logic, mind, physics. We are mastering that. We do not need more of that. We need to balance this by tapping into the I am, into the presence, into the state of being, of pure existence, into the wisdom, into the intuition, into the heart, into the invisible, to the spirit, which is presence, pure presence, without thought. By balancing those two, we can create empowerment. Now, because if we identify ourselves with a form, external, with our possession, with our achievement, with the way we look, with what we have, this is the form, this is the visible, and each form is subject to time. It needs time to be born, and it needs time to die. It's not infinite, it's temporary, and it has to be dissolved sooner or later. Okay, so the more we begin to explore the I am, our aim is to explore the I am, or what is the beingness of us, like pure consciousness, without it identifying with any kind of form, and then we can play with the form even better, but not losing ourselves into the form. Okay, so how this idea relate to the three-step formula of Bashar? How this Merkaba, this kind of structure, where we say that we have here and now, when we connect this central axis, when we dive into the present moment, being more here and now, what's happened, it's actually we begin to follow the formula by default. Why? Because the formula, it says, do what you love or follow your excitement. When we are more here and now, we are much more aware. Our awareness is growing. We are more sensitive. We can perceive those impulses from the higher mind. Our sense awareness, sense perceptions, they're heightened, and we can perceive, we can receive much easier those impulses, this impulse that our higher mind is sending us, So it's very easy to receive to know what is right and when it's right to do. The other thing that happens naturally when we are more here and now, Bashar said, do it to the best of your ability. But if you are in the present moment, if you're not hurry to arrive into the future, or if you don't feel regret for the past, but completely root yourself in the present moment, there is a quality that is embedded, infused in all of your actions. When you eat, when you sleep, when you drink, when you walk, when you are present, you're doing it to the best you can. When you work, when you talk, it's quality that it's built naturally inside. You don't need to think about that. The third one, with zero insistence, the insistence can be only when we project that certain outcome into the future is more important than the present moment. And then we see the present moment like an obstacle. We want to arrive to the future, and we create space-time distortion in our reality, because all realities can happen here and now. When we see the present moment like not enough, like an obstacle, we lose everything. We lose our mastery. And insistence, it's when we insist that something else is better than what we have here and now. And when we are present, when we allow ourselves to live more in the moment, then we feel lighter. And this kind of experiences like insistence, they are very heavy, and when they approach us like an idea, like a thought, they feel very heavy, and we feel discomfort, and we just drop them. We do not prefer to experience them because we can recognize them like illusion that they are not relative for us to experience anymore. So they naturally drop too. The fourth step, always positive meaning, it's so when we have more acceptance and we are more aware in the present moment, we open the space. We have more allowance for anything in life to happen, not only externally, but also internally. All right, and this space, it can give us, also a time to decide how do we like to perceive this, what meaning do we want to embed in these circumstances, how do we like to approach it, which perspective we want to apply here. We have more space and more time to decide. We are not reactive anymore. Something happened and we immediately respond, like subconsciously, So we have more awareness and time to decide. And the fifth step, it's investigate your belief system. So when we explore ourselves like awareness and we detach from the idea of who we are, from our history, our story, from our minds, then we can observe the mind and choose which thought, which definitions we prefer. If we are one with the mind, if we completely loosed and identified with the mind, we have no choice. The thinking patterns are happening to us, not through us. So by being more present, by experiencing ourselves like a space in which the forms appearing and disappearing allow us to separate from the mind. But the paradox is that once we separate, we can choose, we can pick up this or that, or we can observe the negative thoughts without give them attention or gravity, and become them, So these 5 steps, they absolutely naturally occur like a default if we connect the top and the bottom of the Merkaba and allow ourselves to be here and now. Now on the right here we see Einstein formula, mass multiplied by speed of light squared. So this is the mass, this is the time, this is the form. If you multiply by the speed, by the awareness, you have the energy. All right, so from the left we have mass, we have form, we have information that we face in our life, like information, what we learn, circumstances, structures, existence, everything in existence that have some kind of structure. But this thing, if we multiply it with our imagination, which we are doing all the time, with if we give different interpretation, if you modulate it in a different way, embed it with different meaning, see it from different perspective, point of view, then you can control the energy output. If you have positive here on the right, higher perspective, positive perspective, then the energy like a total will be positive. No matter what the circumstances are here, this thing on the right, it's squared, it's multiplied by itself. So it's a very important number. All right, it's invisible, it's mysterious, you cannot touch it, but it makes a lot of sense. It matters, it materializes actually, which is from that side. This is a primary, this is the secondary. Here it's first, and then it's here. But what happens in our reality right now, like human beings, we allow ourselves the circumstances to determine our state of being, our perspective, and to control our experience, and we feel like victims. And if you remember that actually this is squared by itself, it's multiplied by itself, we can pay more attention to the inner world, to the modulation, the perspective and point of view, and understand that our imagination is very real and it's very useful, and then create a completely different energy output. We can generate cleaner energy instead of emotions, feelings, coherent energy, powerful, deep feelings of completion, of gratitude and love by changing just this. And this is what we're going to create in Allistar-Center community. You may see a link below in the comments if you are more interested. If this information, you resonate with it, you want to explore not just like an intellectual knowledge, something that you can agree or disagree, but how actually different tools, different techniques, how to integrate it from concept to experience, from knowledge to wisdom, then you can join in the Allistar-Center community. It's absolutely free, and we can do it every Sunday together and experience this empowerment, going deeper into the present moment, travel into different parallel realities, creating them together, and talk about this idea and anything that we prefer. So thank you for your attention. Really appreciate your time and your attention here. If you have any questions, or if you want to give us suggestions, please feel free to do it in the comments. I will see you in the next video.